America is preparing for a race war. This is what they want to happen. If you notice, there have been major protests since President Trump took office across this nation. And these protests have been largely led by white people. There hasn't been one arrest. No one was killed. No one was stopped. No one was violently, physically abused. And they've been coming out by the thousands upon the thousands and upon the thousands. But if that were black people protesting in the streets, there would have been murders everywhere. So-called justification of force. This is what they want. Do not fall for the ploy. Do not fall into the trap. Because the only people that are going to suffer, just like they did during the civil rights era, a time that people want to forget. They don't want to talk about the 60s. They don't want to talk about Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and the civil rights movement. They don't want to talk about Bull Connor, the vitriolic racist. They don't want to talk about the notorious late governor of Alabama, George Wallace. They don't want to talk about how the police sicked dogs on our mothers and grandmothers and great-grandmothers in the streets. And this is what they want America to become. Let me say something to all you black men out there. You all fell for the stupidest ploy that could ever happen. Kamala Harris, the former vice president of the U.S., she was made to seem like she was the one who was responsible for the mass incarceration of black men in America. And you fell for it. And you said you weren't going to vote for her because when she was the Attorney General of California, she locked black men up. Black men have been getting locked up since I was a child. It wasn't because of Kamala Harris. She did what any other U.S. Attorney General would do. They do it in every city. Mass incarceration, the correction corporations of America, the prison industrial complex is real. The prisons are filled almost to the rafters with prominently black men. So don't blame former Vice President Kamala Harris as the reason why you didn't vote for her. You didn't vote for her because you chose not to vote for her, because you were lied to. You were told you were going to get $5,000, which was a lie. You were told, and while I'm thinking about all these sellout, mega racist, bigoted evangelicals who are now appallingly silent behind the scenes. They have quietly gathered together around the so-called spiritual advisor, and they come to the White House undercover at night where no one can see them. And a lot of these black mega pastors sold us out. They took the money, they took the bait, and everything else. I found a video basically that explains exactly what I'm talking about. But do not fall for it. When the murder of George Floyd, former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin, is finally pardoned, and he will be, let it go. It is what it is. There's no need to go into the streets and get angry and get bitter about it. They protect their own. But here in America, our ancestry is not going to be eliminated. Our contributions is not going to be eliminated. All of the laws that are being passed and enacted against black people. So you got to understand the code words. DEI stands for black. That's what it stands for. And they're calling us the N-words behind the closed doors. Don't think they're not doing it. And they're going to get caught. Because many of them are stupid. They don't have to shut up. And what the true intentions of their hearts are, it will be revealed publicly. Now, you have a chance to get it right before I play this video. You got a chance to get it right a year and a half from now. Midterm elections are coming up. Do what you're supposed to do this time. And don't think that former Vice President Kamala Harris lost by a large margin, because she did not. Over 40+ million people voted for her. All of the Mexicans and Hispanics and Latinos who are regretting voting for Donald Trump, you made your choice. You made your decision. You did it because you hated Kamala Harris and you thought it was going to benefit you. How many times did I come before this camera and talk to you about Project 2025? You thought it was a joke. You thought it was a game. It's called a playbook. And no, Donald Trump did not write the playbook, and he is not the architect behind Project 2025. He is just following the implementation of it and following the script. You got too many, let me talk about the Proud Boys. The Proud Boys, they're the new KKK. That's all they are. And you can tell who they are. They're cops, they're judges, they're preachers, because they all cover their faces up and they all wear the same kind of clothes because they don't want to be identified. That's reminiscent of the KKK. It's the resurgence of the modern KKK. They want to slaughter black people by the millions, by the hundreds of thousands in the streets, and make it look like they're defying law and order. Law and order with tyranny is nothing more than butchery. That's what it is. I don't see any white people being discriminated against here in America. Not one. And I'm going to do a video soon about the ex-sheriff who was given a full and unconditional pardon. But I found this video here from Hawk's podcast. The title of it is, quote, "Trump is desperate for racial violence in the U.S." I'm going to play it for you. I want you to hear it for yourself. Let me know what you think about it in the chat down there. I don't have on my reading glasses, so I cannot see the comments. I'll put them on in a minute. All right, let's get to it.
Donald Trump's racist provocations are going to lead to violence sooner or later, and that's what he wants. Recently, he issued an executive order that was basically titled "Unleash the Police." And last week, his Civil Rights Division in the Department of Justice, led by Harmeet Dillon, did a couple of things. She announced that she is shifting the focus of the Civil Rights Division away from what its focus has been for the last 70 years, that made it the crown jewel of the Department of Justice. She is shifting its focus away from discrimination against marginalized communities in the United States, including black people in the LGBTQ community and women and the disabled, to focusing on discrimination against white Christians in the United States. Religious discrimination, discrimination against religious people. And we all saw Donald Trump's treatment of the black president of South Africa in the Oval Office this week. Donald Trump is absolutely desperate to get black Americans out in the streets protesting. There have been a lot of protests over the last 4 months. And every protest that I've gone to has pretty much been white people exclusively. And the police have just hung out on the outer edges, leaning up against buildings. The one protest that I read about where there were a significant number of arrests was in Philadelphia, and most of the people that were arrested were black people, and the majority of those were black women. A lot of those were older black women. But Donald Trump wants racial violence in the streets in the United States, and he can't get that unless there are black people, black Americans protesting in the streets. He wants that, first of all, because he's incredibly racist and he hates black people, and he really hates black women, especially educated black women. But he also wants to use it as a pretext for his martial law bullshit. And we've all seen his immigration policies and practices over the last 4 months and what he's doing to brown people and immigrants. And he wants, he and his supporters basically want an all-white America again. They want white supremacist, male-dominated patriarchy, white male-dominated patriarchy, white supremacist country that is also an authoritarian theocracy. He also, his handpicked U.S. attorney in New Jersey, Alina Habba, who prior to representing him had been an attorney specializing in representing parking garages, and she defended him, such as the case may be, in a lawsuit that he filed against Hillary Clinton and a bunch of other people that resulted in him having to pay over $1 million in their attorney's fees, Hillary Clinton's attorney's fees. She represented Trump in the civil case in New York that he lost, and he now owes the state of New York over $600 million. And she represented him in the second E. Jean Carroll case that resulted in an $83 million verdict against him. So he rewarded her legal genius by making her the U.S. attorney for the state of New Jersey. And a couple of weeks ago, 3 members of Congress and the mayor of Newark, New Jersey, went to an ICE detention facility in Newark, New Jersey, and there was a kerfuffle, and there were 2 people. Well, there was one person who was arrested on scene, the black mayor of Newark, Ras Baraka, and then this past week, they arrested Congresswoman LaMonica McIver, a Democrat from New Jersey, whose district includes most of Newark, New Jersey. The other 2 members of Congress were not arrested. And add in the 4 months of anti-DEI. This is an explicitly racist administration. And I'm sure that it is incredibly confusing to Donald Trump as to why Black Americans are not out in the streets in force as they were during the summer of 2020. And we saw all of the police violence that accompanied those protests because Black people were out in the streets. The last 4 months, the protests have been all white.
Let me just interject this and say this here. Why should we be out in the streets protesting? Why? For what? We are tired. Black people have protested for everything, everyone, and everybody for a long time. They fought racial injustice, racial discrimination of every kind in this nation. Many of the people who have come to America, they're living their lives peacefully because of the hard, back-breaking, protesting, anti-violence work that Black activists did. And they got no credit for it. The history books are full, and I'm not talking about white history. I'm talking about our history books. Our history is preserved. It's preserved well. I oftentimes tell people, do your own reading, do your own research, do your own studying for yourself. Don't depend upon anything, anyone else, or anybody to educate you. Educate yourself. No one can stop you from succeeding. No one can stop you from learning. No one can stop you from growing and going forward. No one can stop you from being what God Almighty Himself intended for you to become and be in this world. Politicians come and go. They're not there permanently. Policies change all the time. And I refuse to be a part of anything that's going to create divisiveness, division, racial hatred. All people, all human beings from all walks of life, all faiths, all religions, all nationalities, all ethnic origins deserve respect. There is no superior race. Hitler was pissed off because Jesse Owens came over there during the Olympics during the 30s and won every Olympic battle that was put before him. So his theory of white Aryan supremacy was exposed. Hitler came and Hitler was defeated. Stop being apathetic. Stop losing hope. Stop thinking that this is the end. It's not the end. You have to be determined to take a stand. Either we stand for what is right or we stand for what is wrong. History will record those who stand for what is right. And history will remember those who stood for what was wrong. When Barack Obama became the first black president of America, people hated him, people loved him, some supported him, many didn't. It was now sick Senator Mitch McConnell who said they were going to make sure they do everything to make sure that Obama failed. The day that he was being inaugurated, they were down there in a swank hotel in Washington, D.C., plotting his ruinous destruction, and it didn't work. It didn't work then, and it won't work now. So we don't have to be out in the streets protesting and raising hell. Why? Because you're not going to listen anyway. So their champion has become president, so be it. It is what it is.
White people, primarily. And Trump and local police forces do not meet those crowds with police violence. They just don't. And, you know, it's incredibly important, I think, that people who look like me continue to show up to these protests consistently, day after day after day, over the next several months or years. But we can always just go back home and, at the end of the day, and retreat into our whiteness. I heard that phrase from a black woman on this app. I can't remember who it was, or I would give her credit, but that just stuck with me. We can retreat into whiteness. That's always our top designation category. You know, but it's like when you look at the authoritarian playbook, you know, he's got to find an enemy within. And sure, he's got immigrants. He's been railing on DEI. He hasn't yet come out and just you know, when you look at the language that he uses about immigrants, I mean, it's incredibly dehumanizing language, refers to them as vermin, poisoning the blood of our country. And he did that during the campaign with the Haitians in Ohio, the Haitian immigrants in Ohio. They're eating the cats, they're eating the dogs. And since Inauguration Day, he hasn't used that kind of language explicitly about Black Americans at scale. But again, I think he's got to be just absolutely dumbfounded at the things that he is doing with his executive orders, what his Civil Rights Division and the DOJ is doing, how he's treated leaders like the president of South Africa, the things he's been doing with DEI. An incredibly racist administration. I'm sure he's utterly dumbfounded as to why Black Americans are not out in the streets. But if they do, and he gets to use violence, then he will have his enemy within the United States. He views immigrants as an enemy without to get rid of. But if he gets black people out into the streets, they're going to be his enemy within. He's desperate for it. He's absolutely desperate for it.
I want to talk about the art of the deal.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching. I appreciate it. To my fellow brothers and sisters out there, be wise, be courageous, be strong, stay focused. Don't waste your time destroying your life over things really that we cannot change. You know, my people are way down from the deep South. And they told me all the stories, the historiology of racism and bigotry and prejudice and segregation, and all the things that they had to deal with and put up with, and how they survived it. They survived it then, we can survive it now. Midterm elections are coming up. Get it together. Do what you're supposed to do. Thank you all for watching. Kindly subscribe to Tyrone Bowman Live. I would appreciate it. We're going to continue to do good work here. Never surrender. Never quit.